ish based conversational podcast slash live stream slash whatever the hell we're calling this. My name is Chad. With me, as is proving to be always again. I think I can say that. Of course, now having said that, everybody say goodbye for Greg. He's going to go on a 3-month long involuntary sabbatical. Not of his.
None of my own volition.
Yes, but Greg, how you doing, buddy?
Hello, I'm good. It's hot in here.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an adventure tonight because I feel like we're definitely in the garage, but we're definitely in nature too because there are a inordinate amount of bugs in here today with the little Japanese beetles. There's little glass flies in here. There are moths. There's a whole conglomeration of stuff up by the light up there. It's going to be an adventure today. So it's going to be Shifting Lanes Garage / nature show, National Geographic.
That is oddly fantastic. But as far as nature is concerned, where is it? Nope, that's the wrong button.
I feel like you have something for this somehow.
I do. So you can't really
Wow.
you can't really see it because it's nighttime. But right out there, that is my deck. And right about there is where we have our deck table. What the fuck are they called? We're just gonna go with table because I don't feel like thinking. On it, we have an umbrella, as you do on the deck. You know, the sun is brutal and things of that. Well, there's a giant bald-faced hornet's nest developing over there. So,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Lovely.
it's not great.
Time to nuke them.
So I have one of my friends. We've mentioned them before, Cord and Greg. Courtney's father is an exterminator, and he's gonna come over and dust them, just so like they're dead because these bald-faced hornets, they're pretty fucking.
Yeah, they are.
They are nasty
They get
and
pissed super easy.
and they are resilient little fuckers. And they're
Yeah.
freaking big too.
Yeah.
And
They will hurt if they get you.
yeah, huh? So yeah,
Well, good
that's
news.
the
They're outside. You're inside because top of the food chain.
yes. But as with that and your situation in the elements in the Mate garage,
Yes.
our new studio can't come soon enough. Which I'm pleasantly surprised to mention. It's on the one hand very good news in the sense that we have, without even trying, found a buyer who's
Ooh.
literally already said yes to our asking. Which,
Nice.
on the one hand, this is awesome. On the other hand, are we asking too low? Anyone who's sold a car will tell you that. So the new house, which would mean new studio, could be on the horizon sooner than we thought. And obviously,
Awesome.
chat, y'all haven't been privy to our internal conversations, nor would you really want to. Actually, to be fair, it's a lot like the show, only I don't make fun of Greg as much.
Shockingly.
Although that's from my side. Greg's over here like, you motherfucker, I cry to myself to sleep 4 times a week because of you. But no, we've been talking about it. So like when I get the new house, once I'm settled in and I figure out a space, I'm going to be building a studio. And that studio hopefully is going to be me and Greg in person. So instead of like through the magic of the internet, me slapping Greg, I can just reach over and be like, Greg, you ignorant. So that's kind of exciting. That's not a next
You
week thing.
ignorant
That's
slut.
not a next month thing. That's like a 2 to 3 month down the road thing. But it is pretty exciting. Andrew, what's going on, my dude? Welcome. Steve, what's good, buddy? And Sean, how y'all doing tonight?
What's up, guys?
We have some pretty interesting topics, and for once, Greg didn't come up with them. So
That's right.
we're not going to be talking about crossovers at all.
I'll figure out a way to get crossovers in there just to rustle your jimmies.
We'll see about that. Um,
Oh, I already have it on the docket for the first one.
well, I have three topics, and I plan to make them last. Although, to be fair, if you ask any of my ex-girlfriends, my planning to last and what actually happens are two completely different things.
Ooh, self-burn. Love it.
Yeah. Sean asks, "What are you moving? What are you moving next door to Greg, or is Greg moving in with you?" No, I am just moving into a house relatively. Well, I don't know yet, but it might be slightly closer to Greg. It might be slightly further than my house is right now. I'm not 100% sure, but the big part of it is having an actual dedicated space for recording videos, for doing the podcast, for all of that sort of stuff. So our only if we have a technical issue, it's literally me plugging in and unplugging stuff, as opposed to being like, "Oh, is Greg doing what I said? Did he break his computer again?" That sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
Sean goes, "VTEC crossover, not the vehicle, but the nature of VTEC and how it occurs." Huh?
Huh?
I don't know. We're not talking about crossovers unless you consider a reusable rocket. Giggity. A crossover. But yeah, so just on my end, Lamborghini has some interesting news. Hyundai, I just lost all respect for one of their European executives. And we're going to kick things off with the title and thumbnail of the show. And that is Honda. Now, we all know Steve loves him Honda. He goes tonight in his VTEC pajamas. He's just big, huge, enormous fan. And he's on 3 hours of sleep, so...
So we're doing his topic first.
Well, we're doing his topic first, A, but also he's tired, so his ability to defend himself. Inception of crossover jabs, Sean. So at any rate, we all know Honda, creators of the glorious VTEC, which pretty much every car has now some form of variable valve timing. But at any rate, they're known for that. They're known for making great small engines in cars. They're known for making great small engines in lawnmowers, things around the house, that sort of stuff. They make a jet, and their F1 engines no longer suck. But
They're a good company.
Yes, they are. Oh, what the hell is the? Oh, is it from Idiocracy? Like diversify or something? So I forget the exact line.
Oh yeah.
You gotta diversify
Yeah.
your whatever. I forget.
Yeah, I forget what that is, but I know what you're talking about.
Something I learned today is that they're also in the reusable rocket space.
I also did not know this until today either.
I saw it on a video of I was watching. It's not his latest, but it was the one before that. The habitual line crosser. I watch his content. It's fucking hilarious. If you don't watch
really
it,
good.
It features a sexually frustrated F-22 Raptor. Say less.
It is awesome. He's one of my favorite creators. It's so funny.
So, according to a press release from the Honda website, which apparently Honda, the power of dreams, how we move you, create, transcend, augment. This is their page, which, yeah. So in Japan, shockingly, on June 17th, 2025, Honda R&D Co. Limited, research and developed subsidiary of Honda Motor Company. Okay, I'm not reading all of that. Conducted a launch and landing test of the experimental reusable rocket. It's about 85, or it's about 6.3 never been to the moon meters, and about 85. So it's not a big boy. It's let me see if this picture actually is. Nope, it's tiny. One thing, not to get on some sort of tangent, and before I drop like 7 more F-bombs to get this thing demonetized before we even hit the 10-minute mark, is when these press sites include pictures I took this picture on my Motorola flip phone circa 2008. Like the tiny low-res images. It's like, Honda, you just launched. I mean, granted, the rocket didn't get very high, but it launched and landed. Which is no small feat. Just ask Mr. Musk or Bezos or whatever the private rocketeering is. It's not like, show some damn pictures. The people want to know. But at any rate, so through the successful test, Honda achieved its intended rocket behaviors for the launch and landing, reaching an altitude of 271.4 meters. They're never going to get to the moon if they keep using these units of measurement. I'm just saying.
What the fuck is a kilometer?
I mean, freedoms per bald eagle 1, everybody else 0. Actually, I should have looked this up. How many successful moon landings did we have? Like 5 or 6?
Yeah.
But it basically went almost 300 meters into the sky and landed within 37 centimeters of the target touchdown point with a flight duration of almost a minute. And, of course, they obtained data along the way. Greg,
Yes.
what do you think about Honda having a rocket?
I think it's going to be the most reliable rocket out there. I'll honestly say that I don't hate it. I don't. Mostly because Honda has this penchant for like doing something and doing it right, and when they do it wrong, they fix it correctly. There's not a lot that they do that is bad, and when it does kind of go bad, they're like, okay, we get it. Here's a newer one. What do you think? And it's usually better. There's been a couple instances of cars that they've made, as well as other products that have not been up to like the typical Honda Japanese, not efficiency, but like accuracy and craftsmanship, that you would get in like a Toyota, a Lexus, a Honda, an Acura, that kind of thing. But the next iteration of that has always been better and fixed those problems. So for me, if they are, I mean, they're already in aerospace, like you said, they have a jet. So this is not like a wildly crazy thing for them to think about. They already have an aerospace division. I know rocketry is not the same as having a jet, but it's not like they haven't flown before. So it's something that I'm actually very okay with. And I find it less concerning than Tesla having a rocket. But now that Tesla's done it, and like on project initiation, when I heard of like SpaceX, I'm just like, that's never going to work. And now, they're making it work. Now that on project initiation, like Honda is doing this, I'm just like, oh, I feel like Honda can kind of figure it out, So
Right. Well, I mean, I know we have thoughts and stuff about Mr. Musk.
Yeah.
And this isn't getting political, just as a man who runs companies in a way that, at any rate, don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. SpaceX has been a I don't want to say fairly, has been a successful venture.
Yes,
and
totally.
The one thing I look at this is it's another player in an emerging, I don't want to say market, but we are living through, although it's less fanfare because there's just so much more going on in our lives than there was back in the 50s and 60s, but we are privy to the next generation of a space race. Instead of nations, it's private companies. So
Right.
it's pretty exciting to have the idea of people are going into space. You have, what's the word? They barely made it into what one would consider to be space. And like Katy Perry came down and was made like the most cringeworthy fucking interview in the history of everything.
Right.
It's exciting for that because like number one, I forget who it was and I forget the exact details. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it in time with everything else I had going on today and everything. But like there are materials on the moon that if you could figure a way to mine them, are really good. There's a surplus of them up there that are good for other sorts of technology, i.e., nuclear power. As we all know, we use fission right now, and it does have a pretty nasty byproduct of, well, that pesky radioactive waste that won't be safe for, you know, our great, 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 great grandchildren. But on the flip side to that, they have figured out how to contain it, how to encapsulate it, how to make it safe. And basically, nuclear, despite all of the bad press it gets, is the cleanest energy in the world right now.
True.
But this material that they have, I forget the exact thing, and I have to go look. But it's basically for fusion reactors. Fusion reactors right now are really like they haven't the energy in versus energy out. They're not efficient enough, and they have this nasty habit of just destroying the container that's holding the reaction, which not ideal. But like it's a much more efficient. It doesn't have the radioactive or as much of the radioactive byproduct as current nuclear, and then you start talking about the idea of having a fusion. I know this is way off base for an automotive show, but then you start having the idea of having a cleanish nuclear energy that I don't know that you could put in the back of a DeLorean and go see the Old West.
I mean, what's the unit? 1.21 gigawatts.
Yes. So yeah. Well,
I can't remember the number. I think it's 1.21 gigawatts, even though it's supposed to be gigawatts.
Yes, and it's applicable because I think he got the material or something in the first movie from the what you call it, the Iranians.
There you go.
Which they don't really have much of that anymore.
Nope. But at any rate, I mean, I think Honda having this, it's also good for competition for this because it's gonna push. Because what was the biggest driver behind the U.S. getting to the moon? Everyone else trying to get to the moon, right?
No, mostly the Russians.
Mostly the Russians, but everyone said they had a space program, but it's mostly the Russians, right? So whatever grandiose plans SpaceX has, or I think what's the other one Bezos is doing, Blue Origin, right? Having another player in this game is going to push this forward, which is really awesome for me because I'm a space nerd. I love space stuff and facts and blah blah blah. It's just super fascinating to me that all of this crazy emptiness and yet not emptiness at all exists, and that we are like the tiniest specks and are both the most meaningful and the most meaningless things all at the same time, which is just it's just wild thought, right? You think about it and it could be the craziest thing ever. It probably exists in space somewhere. The laws of physics constantly being rewritten and broken. Either way, that whole tangent was to say that the more that we get companies to want to go to space, to push space tourism, space travel, space anything forward, I am very much for.
Yeah, because I don't know. I'm with you on that sort of stuff. It's that's really really cool. I mean, imagine my dad would tell me stories about the Apollo 11 mission and everything, and how that was just a how that was just a the entire nation was glued to the television set.
Right.
Everybody was watching the same thing. I don't think there's one thing in this world that could do that to people again. Full stop.
Agree.
It could be the pick an extreme situation, pick something. Would a majority? Sure. But there's still going to be people who are F that, I'm going to do, there's just so much more, right? it's a crazy time to be alive.
Yeah.
So I just want to just double check, circle back to chat. Sorry, I got sidetracked. I had some moderating to do, and I apologize for anything that popped up or anything that was inappropriate.
Uh-oh, I didn't see that. I have to go back and watch that one.
But we go with Sean goes, I think Honda has a helicopter too. I mean, it would make sense. They make small jet engines. Steve goes, I'm not Hector, but I'm sure shit would rock out to VTEC jammies. I mean, again, it goes with what we know about what a beautiful human person you are. Sean goes, a sailboat. He doesn't know how VTEC would work on a sail. Variable sail length. Make it work. And then he made a joke about Nissan sending parts up into space, then unintentionally. I mean, you say that, but I haven't seen a lot of like Nissan engine failure shit. More like Subaru stuff, although like Subaru engines aren't really launching things vertically.
True.
Steve goes, I might be downgrading from the CRV. I'm looking at a 2017 Civic manual. Whatever works for you, buddy. We've had on and off the show. We've had conversations about it. It's just get what's right for you, get what you need. Because like, you know, life first, automotive enthusiasm second. Oh, that's another upside to the move happening sooner rather than later. Mustang. Oh God, do I miss that car? Tony we had on last week. I'm a part of his Discord, and they're talking about cars and driving, and they're going on these drives, and it's like, I drove an Equinox for like an hour and a half today.
Great.
Sean goes, going back to Elon, he goes, he's watched a video where it breaks down everything Musk has done. Really seems to be building towards colonizing Mars. Starlink for networking. Starlinking is another good thing that he's done. SpaceX for space stuff like transport. The Boring Company for tunneling under. Like, yeah, like he's got a lot of stuff. And I will say the fundraiser he did for the Boring Company with the not a flamethrower, which was basically just one of those tar. Again, not a flamethrower. Tar torches for roofing. Tar roofing like industrial buildings and stuff. Was smart. You all right?
Oh yeah, there was a beetle on my microphone.
Volkswagen. Sean again. Russia was beating us hard for the first half of the space race. They had multiple manned missions while we were still blowing stuff up on the pad. But yeah, we won. Just let me just check my notes. Let me just check my notes here. Times Russia went to the moon versus time we went to the moon. Suck it.
Space raced.
I mean, we're car guys. You know, they almost had us. They never had their rockets.
What was it? What was the joke we were making? The Fast and Furious joke earlier.
Oh, about Hector.
Because it's a Honda. Like,
yeah. Don't let that distract you. That Honda's going to have 6 reusable rockets with Motec exhausts. It's like,
and afterburners. It begs for Fast and Furious memetry.
Yes. I have some regrets on the cover. I wish I had added some of that stuff in, but you know, life. Sean goes, North Korea going successful to the moon successfully would have most of the world watching. Yeah, I guarantee you, your neighbor would still be watching a cat video. Mm-hmm. Just that, like, people just do not care about that stuff anymore. Not to mention the national pride just isn't what it was. Like, beating the Russians was such a thing.
Yeah.
You know, look at what just beating their hockey team. How much legs that story has. Mm-hmm. You know, and everything. So like, and not for nothing, like North Korea and shit. Like,
yeah.
Let me know when they get like, yeah, let me know. But, Greg.
Yes.
What I think we've exhausted our knowledge and ability to speak on aerospace slash rocketeering.
Yes. Yes, let's move on to car stuff.
Car stuff, which you mentioned you have.
I do?
You said what you said.
Oh
You had a
no,
topic.
I have something to mention about one of the topics that you have. That's what
Oh,
I meant. I meant I'm gonna rustle your jimmies about one of the topics that you chose because I have I have an opinion that's going to both be logical and anger the living shit out of you. So let's do it.
okay. So moving on to my new most hated car executive on the planet. With the recent resignation of Stellantis' CEO, the Hyundai, where is it? Why don't they ever? So, in an interview with Car Magazine, Hyundai's managing director of the European Technical Center in Germany, there's a title, but Germans, so, goes on to say, nobody wants manual gearboxes anymore. Now, I will admit, manual transmission sales do not make up a vast or anywhere near my majority of car sales. We've said about this at length. The average 99.9% of all car buyers look at a car like we might look at a refrigerator. It's there. The refrigerator's there to keep stuff cold. The car is to take me places. That's how people look at it. But to sit here and put the nobody saying nobody wants a manual is highly concerning for a brand that arguably is pushing performance more than a lot of other people. Granted, their internal combustion performance isn't, that of some others, but they are a pretty big performance brand. And like it's just like it's again, it's an executive not understanding where understanding people, in my opinion. It's the let's make the Charger an EV, and if they want internal combustion, give them a turbocharged straight six on a much grander scale. Because every performance car that comes out, what are the first thing people will ask? Is it a manual? No manual, I don't want it. Now, that's a lot of internet hot air, but like, I don't know about you, Greg, but there's only maybe 2 or 3 cars I would even remotely consider if I had the financial means of buying that doesn't have a manual gearbox. I mean, I don't know. You might have a different opinion. You sold your manual to get an automatic. I will never forgive you for that. So, what are your thoughts on this statement, apart from the fact that, the overwhelming majority of car sales are automatics and the overwhelming majority of people just do not give a fuck?
So, I mean, that's pretty much it. Is
Aha!
What he's saying is correct, unfortunately. Like,
No,
there is
technically it's not, because nobody implies zero. The number of people who want manuals is not zero.
Right, but we've also done that with other things everywhere. Like, oh, nobody likes this. And yeah, actually people do. So here's what I was going to say is technically he's wrong, but he's also not wrong in the sense that if you were to take away all manuals, people would deal with it. Like, that's just a fact. Like, they'd have to. There's also performance offerings for enthusiasts that would keep them happy in the sense. Would it satisfy? Would it scratch the itch? If you will. No. There are old cars with manuals that will still exist for many, many decades, if not hundreds of years to come. So there are those cars to help that. The problem is people don't care about cars. They don't. They don't care about cars. They don't care about transportation. They see it as this menial thing. And it didn't used to be like that. Cars used to be, this era of freedom and financial stability and blah, 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 blah. That, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s and 90s, you got that vibe from cars, right? But as soon as the turn of the century happened and all of these innovations started happening and consumerism and blah, 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 all of this stuff started to get like way out of hand, you saw that downturn of people saw cars as appliances more so than this thing that you love. So that's essentially what I think this executive is getting at, is the manual is going away because people don't care as much about it and cars. And in that sense, I think this executive is correct. It's an unfortunate truth, but it is the truth. Like most people want something that's going to work, that's going to get them to work, it's going to be reliable, and it's not going to cost them an arm and a leg. And that's the vast majority of car buyers. And with margins shrinking for these companies, they are going to have more and more executives that think this way so that they can sell more to make those margins grow, or just sell more cars in general and to the majority of people that want those cars. The companies making manuals for enthusiasts is not a profitable endeavor, and I don't think it will be ever again, unfortunately. So in that sense, the sense that they're wrong, obviously, like people do want manual gearboxes. Of course they do. There are millions of people that want manual gearboxes, but millions of people do not outnumber hundreds of millions of people that don't care. Like it is a catastrophically low number that actually want the manual. And like honestly, it's I didn't find it to be burdensome as a daily driver of a car. But if you're commuting into, say, a city, say, Jersey to New York, or outskirts of Dallas into Dallas, or whatever major city you think of when you think of commuting into a city for work. LA is a particularly bad one. An automatic just is a better choice, because to be able to row your own in that scenario as a daily driver doesn't make sense anymore, because it's not enjoyable at all. That scenario, even to enthusiasts, will never be enjoyable. Like bumper to bumper traffic, 2, 3, 4 hours at a time with a manual. You want to drive a manual how? Spiritedly and properly. And that's not a scenario where you can do that. So I know this is just one example, obviously, but I don't think that this executive sort of gets it, in the sense of you do have to have offerings for those that are going to be the most vocal about your brand. And people that drive crossovers are not those people. People that drive enthusiast cars that might be like a automotive journalist or someone in a car club, they will be. So it's the same thing that I always go back to the argument of when you went into a showroom in the past, what was always there? It was the sports car or the halo car. That's what brought people in. And then you sold them on being part of that experience by saying, hey, this Dodge Viper is
never offered in an automatic, by the way.
No, I know. But this Dodge Viper is, in our showroom. But, that's a $100,000 car. But you know what you can't afford? This Dodge Neon SRT4 that has some cool things about it, like the Viper. Let me show you about it. Like there were ways for salespeople to like get people in with the halo car, the sports car, and sell them on something else, whether it be either another enthusiast car or like, hey, you know what? The Viper has a V10. You know what's close to a V10? A V8. Check out this SUV that has this V8 in it. Like there are other things. Like I don't understand why we have to just be so black and white with it's either manual gearbox or like or it's either automatic gearbox or nothing. These companies do have the margins to make at least one car with a manual and a fun car with a manual. It's been proven by other companies that are smaller than most of these companies that are bitching about it. So like, I don't understand why we have to continually beat this dead horse. Just offer a manual, especially to your point from Hyundai, one of the companies that is championing car enthusiasm right now. What did Toyota do? People whined enough that the Supra didn't have a manual. What did Toyota do? They made a manual Supra, and tons of them got sold comparatively. Like, it's not a lot compared to a Camry, but when you look at Supra sales, they majority sold manuals for like 2 straight years after they offered it. There's literally evidence showing that people want the manual. Just make it. It's really not that big of a deal for companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies year over year, mind you, to just do it. And it's annoying. The end. That's my rant.
I mean, I think you hit on a lot of good notes. Where I start to just really push back on this notion is word choice matters. And to say nobody tells me that in his... So he's literally... He chose the word nobody. These guys do not talk to the media and just throw words out there. If they do, it's incredibly rare. So every word is carefully calculated and chosen. So to say nobody is a concerning thing to your point of, hey, you can offer a manual, offer it, at least in your performance offerings, or even in such a way to where you have maybe not the top of the range, but you have one that has like the sport pack, and it gives you that sense, right? It's that word nobody that is scary, because effectively what he's saying, and this is in Europe, keep in mind, right, where the amount of manuals purchased has outnumbered the amount of manuals sold in the United States for a long time. So, like, to say nobody, it's just worrying for the future. It's worrying that, you know, I honestly, let's talk about Hansen's car, right? The Veloster N. Mm-hmm. You can get that with a dual clutch transmission. Who the hell wants that? The whole point of a hot hatch, especially one with a 290-ish horsepower, you know, which is, I guess, enough horsepower to get it out of its own way. I'm kidding, of course. 290 is a good amount of horsepower.
I think it's 275, but either way, it's still a pretty light car.
The horror.
I know.
God, a washing machine makes more horsepower. But, like, the whole point of those cars is to drive them enthusiastically. They're the enthusiast version of an everyday car, right? Because hatchbacks are or were the kind of SUV/crossover of Europe.
Right.
So, like, to sit here and say nobody wants, like, a manual, like, does that mean the Elantra N or whatever the successor to that is? It's like, we're just not, like, on the one hand, we have an exhaust from factory that's too loud for California. That's awesome. Here's your not a manual.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's
kind of dumb.
It just worries me. Like, that's the thing. Because Hyundai was sort of championing that inexpensive performance that, like, people were really starting to gravitate towards. Hansen gravitated towards it. He really likes what N is doing, you know, with internal combustion. Yes. He likes the electric stuff, but, like, yeah, whatever. It's just, Steve, it could have been all-wheel drive, and then it would have been $45,000, and, like, nobody would have wanted it. Believe it or not, the front wheel drive modern hot hatch with good differentials are incredibly good. Like, incredibly good. Civic Type R, as much as it pains me to say this. The Veloster N, the Elantra N, all of these cars, front wheel drive, the way the diffs work now are really good. And not for nothing, from a pure enjoyment standpoint, all-wheel drive cars are heavy. You know, we've both driven Focus RSs, and while they're a rocket ship, they're great. They do a lot of really good things. You can still feel the girth to them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying phrasing.
Thick.
I mean, with absolute 3 C's. You know, and that's not what a hatchback is supposed to feel like. A hatchback is supposed to be small, light. Not that you should be chucking it on public roads, but, like, nimble. Your inputs matter, right?
Yeah.
Not something that's kind of heavy. Like, don't get me wrong, Focus RS, great car. I love the fact that they overdrove the rear wheels and control the rear wheel speed through a clutch in the center diff. I love the fact that if they just lock that center diff, the rear wheels are going to spin faster than the front wheels, i.e. drift mode. And that sort of stuff. But the biggest thing is that we all sit here and say we want a manual, fun little sports car to do X, Y, and Z. And then they're like, okay, here's everything you wanted. Cars are too expensive. I liked it back in the day when you could afford a car, blah, 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 right? Like, everybody and their mother wants to sit here and talk about how the BRZ, the FRS, the GR86, whatever the hell they're going to name it tomorrow, needs more power. And I agree with that sentiment. Until you get to the point that once you add power in the form of a bigger engine, it gets more nose heavy, some of the charm of its driving experience goes away. Or you add the complexity of a turbo. All of that adds money. And now all of a sudden your $35,000 affordable sports car is $45,000. It's knocking on the door with Mustangs and stuff who do the job of being, in my opinion, do it a lot better. Like, that's just a truth that, like, you know, people for years were saying if someone came out with an affordable rival to the Miata and didn't make it as, we'll just say, hairdresser friendly, people would buy it. And guess what? They're still making a BRZ and whatever Toyota wants to call theirs.
Mm-hmm.
If they had put a turbo on it and neutered the base model, I would argue that car would not still be with us. Look at that. Look at the Supra. Regardless of whatever you want to say about the Supra and it being a BMW and it looks kind of goofy, everything, it did well at first.
Yep.
But it was just too expensive for what people saw it as, you know? So it's just, I get what you're saying about enthusiasm. I get what you're saying about the manual gearboxes. I agree with a lot of the stuff. I don't agree with the sentiment that, oh, you drive manual and stop it, go. Man up, drive it. I did it. It's not that bad. You know, but at any rate, it's this notion that it's like saying nobody wants a fun car. Well, it might only make up 1%, if that, of all of your sales globally. But if you're doing hundreds of millions of dollars, that's millions of dollars in sales. Right? It still matters. It was like when electric cars first started coming around. Nobody's going to want an electric car. Turns out people did. And we've talked about that ad nauseum. Yeah. But, you know, it's just, yeah, but, right. But Sean, your vehicle itself, has torque. Is it raining by you, Greg?
Yeah.
Also, your, light cover is covering a portion of your screen.
Thank you. I'll move that back.
It's, like I said, it's this quote unquote, it feels like there's a war on enthusiasm. And instead of getting proper enthusiast cars, we get a Ford Explorer ST, which literally nobody's asking for, or like a Nissan Armada Nismo. Yeah, right. Like nobody asked for it, nobody wanted it. You already made an off-roady version of it that people kind of like. Nobody asked for it, right? It's these notions that we're going to put a sporty name on a crossover, and suddenly enthusiasts are going to want it. And if any executives are watching, and I know you are, get real close. I want you to hear this. Nobody gives a crap about a sporty crossover. Not one person. The only reason Porsche makes crossovers that have sporting credentials is because it has a Porsche badge on it. The average enthusiast is not going to give one flake of one shiny, gleaming shit that this is the most powerful crossover. And if you are going to make a fun, performance-oriented SUV, the roadmap is there. Look Ford and Chevy, right? Ford brings back the Bronco. It's this big, beastly off-road machine that is quite literally better than almost all of its competition. It sells. People love it. Chevy comes out with the new Blazer that is a crossover that they try to give off-roadiness to. Guess what's happening? It's dying again. Like the industry needs to take a look at itself and say, this inauthentic crap that like, you know, just because we slapped a badge on it, gave it a little more power, it doesn't mean it's what enthusiasts want. And I know we're a small part of the population, but we don't need much. We need a car with a decent amount of power, a manual gearbox, and is a car that is moddable, so that we can take our GR86 that doesn't make enough power, slap a supercharger on it, and suddenly we're making 350 horsepower, which is what we want. So, with that being said, why can't I find stuff? Nope. There we go. With that being said, Greg, some people in chat have asked about how, I think it was Andrew, how's everything with your Volvo? So, give him the lowdown, the rundown, the quick and dirty.
The dirty.
And I will be right back.
All right.
All right.
So the Volvo, there's not a ton new with it. I haven't really had time or, quite frankly, the money to do anything with it. Working fine, running fine. I do have a like boom 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 sound, not like that. I pronounced in my right front. I'm wondering if the excuse me. Tired. I'm wondering if the wheel is either a little bit either imbalanced, maybe has a crack in it. The tire pressures are all fine. Or I wonder when it was the wheels were getting taken off for a rotation, that the dealer was a bit harsh with it. Not that it's my buddy Sean over at Prestige Volvo. The wheels, you know, I asked, how'd you get them off? He was like, hammer. I'm like, okay. I mean, I knew you had to do something. So I'm wondering if some part of the suspension componentry got bent somehow. Either way, I'm probably gonna it's fine for like going around town. When I get on the highway, there's a little bit of a vibration, but then it goes away. So I'm thinking, I've had that happen on several cars, and it's been a number of different issues. It's either take the wheel off, put it back on. Maybe a bolt is, or maybe a nut is cross threaded, and it's a bolt on these. Maybe it's a bolt is cross threaded, and it's not like 100%, face flush with the wheel hub. So I'll probably just try to take the wheel off and just do that first, because that's free. The other thing is, what could possibly be in the suspension. Oh man, I'm sorry. Here come the yawns. That's wrong. So when I have the wheel off, I'll grab each component and see if there's any play in it. I'll check the wheel hub. I'll check the bushings while I'm down there. I'll check any of the boots that are on any of that stuff, and I'll check the suspension itself. Like I'll try to wrench it around a little bit, see if there's anything. Maybe something got bent. I don't know. I'll have a look. That's the biggest thing. Other than that, the car is great. It's just very rock solid. There's not a lot, bad with it. It's just a really solid car. It's been dead reliable. There's been 3 instances where I could say that it's been, a little questionable, but 2 of those instances were mitigated with oil, because I got the red triangle of death twice from low oil, and I checked the oil and I just topped the oil off and it went away and it was fine. Like honestly, it's been the most reliable car I've ever owned. It's awesome. I have 77,000 miles on it now, so I got it. Man, I don't even remember what year it was. I think it was 2021. So I've had it for 4 years now. I've put about 40. I think I put 47,000 miles on it, because I think I got it with 30,800 on it. So almost 50,000 miles I've put on it. And honestly, it's just been phenomenal. The one drawback I'd say is that it's expensive to maintain in some ways. Like the brakes on this car, it's a floating caliper. The rotors are huge. They're like 14.3 inches. The brake pads, like I did the front brakes and rears all at once. It was like $4,500. But excuse me, that was rotors, pads, front rotors, front pads, rear pads, but not rotors, and then all installed. And it would have been more if I didn't do it through Sean. Like he did it for me, and then the dealer at the dealer probably would have been like another $1,000 to $2,000 on top because he cut me a break on labor and stuff. So it's yeah, it's a lot sometimes. The rest of it's been pretty good. Like there's oh yeah, what was the third? Oh yeah, the third thing was the O2 sensor breaking when we swapped out the downpipe. That's it. Other than that, zero has broken on this car. The Bluetooth and some of the infotainment is a little wonky sometimes, but it's nothing that's all that bad. So the car itself is just really good. I can't see chat, so I'm going to go in through Facebook, or I'll go in through YouTube and look, see what chat's saying. Actually, no, I'll go in through Facebook because I can't see anything on my screen. Let's look. Sorry, I'm not looking at you. I'm trying to get Facebook up on my phone. There we go. Live. We live. All right, Steve. I'm sure you're gone now, but good to see you, dude. Thanks for joining as always. Sean, I put 20,000 miles on the Isuzu, and the 2 years I've been using it, and I'll tell my insurance it's only 6,000 a year. I mean, that's as you do. Let's see. Say Andrew goes, same with the S80. It's still doing solid and very reliable car. I bought mine around the same year when I first bought my S80. And yes, the S80 is especially expensive, especially with maintenance and labor. Yeah, I mean, it's a Volvo. Volvos are a little bit more expensive to maintain than your regular car, so that's going to happen. But overall, this has been the most reliable car that I've ever owned. That nothing's broken, knock on wood.
Whoops.
And yeah, everything works great. It sounds great. It drives great. It's just a great car, quite frankly.
Sort of.
Except it would be better with a manual.
And a bigger turbo.
Mostly the bigger turbo, because swapping manual into this car is basically impossible. But the turbo, not. So that's the running gag. But we have the Dadson back, and we have another topic du jour, if you will. Let's run into that, and then we'll just shoot the shit.
Hold on, I gotta get my. I'm not prepared for this.
Oh no,
the shotgun's upstairs. So, we'll lead into this one with our regular viewers will understand, and the YouTube commenters are a little out of this world tonight.
Are we getting a lot of like spam, or are we just getting some out of pocket stuff?
Well, we had some really out of pocket stuff earlier. Blue 2950. We've never been to space.
Oh yeah, that's factually incorrect.
But hey, which brings me to
forget there's flat earthers out there.
Right. Like dokie dokie.
Yep.
I feel like that should be a question. Like that should just be like the entire survey. When going into a voting booth, it's like, is the Earth flat? Yes or no? And if you say yes, your vote doesn't.
You're not
count.
allowed to vote, right? Exactly. yeah.
No, you're allowed to. It's just. Oh, where'd Gregson go?
What happened?
I don't know. You disappeared. Get better internet.
It probably is my internet. I've been having really bad internet issues recently.
So
we're looking into other options. Anyway, continue.
right. So
Go on with the chlorophyll.
you're not that. Well, no, never mind. I don't know where my head was at with that. Moving on for like the attempt on the. So, if you've watched the show, you know we haven't shied away from. You know, we're not that car channel that's going to sit here and tell you that it's internal combustion or get the F out, right? We've discussed EVs at more than I ever thought I would. It's probably why I get ulcers now. We've talked, but we've also talked about a whole many things. And one of the things we are both in very much agreement on that we are big time believers in is synthetic fuel. Because we've always said the goal is not necessarily to be out of internal combustion or 100% EV or all of this. It's to be carbon neutral, right? And the way synthetic fuel is made, theoretically, if a car runs on synthetic fuel, it is as close to carbon neutral as you're going to get. Obviously, with technology and efficiencies of technology, right? Like we're not 100% there yet. But if it's a technology that can, if it's adopted wide scale, is honestly, in my opinion, the future, right? It's the simplest answer. It's okay, it was like when ethanol came around, right? You have dedicated E85 tanks. Now there's E10, and most gasoline is E10. At least here it is.
Yep.
You know, now you just have a synthetic fuel tank at a normal gas station, a normal pump. It becomes a button on the pump itself. And carbon neutrality and sustainability, right? Because if a car emits carbon and synthetic fuels pull carbon out of the atmosphere, right? So we know that BMW and Ford Porsche and Ford were at sort of the forefront of this, pushing the technology. Porsche's really into it, which is awesome. But another brand, Lamborghini, which is no small thing. You think of Lamborghini as this niche hyper and supercar manufacturer, not selling a lot of units. As far as what they say, isn't necessarily moving the needle on automotive technologies going forward, right? But they're owned by Volkswagen. So you know this conversation is proliferating upwards. And they have come out and said that synthetic fuel could save the internal combustion engine. Well, they're not exactly breaking new ground with that, as we've been talking about that for months. So I'll be expecting a royalty check from Lamborghini any day now.
Right. I never would have expected Lamborghini to do this, like at all.
You know, I honestly think you're going to see your Lamborghinis, your Ferraris, your Porsches, your, Koenigseggs, Paganis, anyone who's basically a manufacturer that makes purpose-built super/hyper cars, right?
Yeah.
Because guess what? You have your EV hyper and supercars. People aren't really buying them. You know, Rimacs are cool and all, but they bought Bugatti. And guess what the next Bugatti's going to be? Hint, hint, not an electric vehicle. Right. V16, in fact.
Yep.
So, like, these companies are going to really push for this tech because people want to hear a screaming V12, V10, V8, right? People want to hear engines. Yeah. So, if it can't be on explosive dinosaur, might as well pursue the next greatest thing. So, in an interview with Australian magazine Car Expert, Lamborghini's chief technical officer argued that synthetic fuel could be the savior of the internal combustion engine. Reuven Mohr, M-O-H-R, added that the Temiaro, that's the Huracan replacement with a twin-turbo V8 that revs past 10,000 RPM. So, the V10's gone. Ooh, 10,000 RPM is how I look at that. Can deliver optimal efficiency and performance with both solutions, gas and e-fuel. He also touched on the emotional aspect like we were talking about, claiming that EVs just can't match the excitement of the internal combustion car. Lamborghini, the fact that you haven't hired me yet is shocking. So like this kind of leads me into we know where you stand on synthetic fuels, but are you more or less optimistic about it now that like a Lamborghini is coming on board? And I guess since you're more knowledgeable on this than I am, really, where do you see synthetic fuel going 5 years from now, 10 years from now, etc.?
So, I mean, I guess I'll start with the last part of that question. Is just it's very tough to predict, just because there still isn't really enough momentum behind it. Sure, yes, it's a really cool technology, but there's now a lot to lose in the space of electric vehicles and alternative fuels. For synthetic fuel to become like the norm. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of lobbying against it, and that's going to hinder its growth in the short term. That being said, I think over the short term, I'm talking like between 10 to 20 years, because let's be 100% honest here. EVs are not going to be the majority in the next 50 to 100 years. It's something that I've said forever, and it's not going to happen, period. They will find something else, whether it be hydrogen or synthetic fuel, whatever. The other side of that is like the long term. So I see synthetic fuel as being sort of the thing that takes us into that next big explosion of human technology on the automotive side. I think that that's going to be the nexus point, because once we sort of master synthetic fuel, well, what's not to say we can't master different types of propulsion that make things go a lot faster without people getting scrambled inside of those vehicles and machines. So I'm talking like, again, going back to like space travel, I feel that when you can eliminate the need for a dependence upon Earth's resources, like oil, fuel, like that, then humanity will start to get into that space of sort of the next level of mastery of the planet. So we can harness the planet for different things. This is a very big tangent, but long term, I'm talking like 100 plus years. I think the next 100 to 500 years, synthetic fuels will be a thing and will be the majority of what propels our vehicles, machines, rockets, blah, blah, blah. Because if we can figure out a way to manufacture it that is both economical, easy, and doesn't use a ton of resources, then the sky is the limit in that sense. And I think that that will then lead to the next big like humanity technology explosion, because we'll figure out one thing, another bug, and then we'll get to the next thing. So I think synthetic fuels really is the future in that sense. I also have a very similar feeling about hydrogen power. I think both of those things can either work in tandem or one of them will work better than the other, because if we can harness that, we can harness an element as a fuel. That's wild, and could be again the next thing that leads humanity to that next plateau. Bringing it back to like cars and where we see this, and am I surprised about Lamborghini getting involved in this? I really think that the synthetic fuel is going to be what makes cars and things work in the future. I can see it happening sooner than 100 years for sure, maybe in the next like 20 to 40, to really kind of get there. I am a little surprised that, like I said, I'm a little surprised Lamborghini's in on this, because I don't think that they have the resources for it. Yes, they are part of Volkswagen Auto Group, sure, which does have the resources for this, and then some. Wait, who owns Lamborghini? Is it Volkswagen? It's Volkswagen, right?
Yeah, they're part of the Volkswagen Auto Group.
Yeah, and then who's Porsche owned by?
Volkswagen Auto Group.
That's what I thought. I was gonna say, wait a second. So
Bugatti was sold to Rimac.
Right. Yeah.
That
No,
was
that was fine. But no, so I'm actually going to go back on that because now that I'm realizing who the owner is of Porsche and Lamborghini, they have a vested interest in both of those places. But it is, I guess, maybe a little bit surprising that it's not just Porsche leading the way and Volkswagen is just like, do this. And it's a little bit more surprising that Lamborghini's in on it at all. Maybe it's part of the master plan. I don't know. Either way, I'm glad Lamborghini is in on it because I feel like the more companies, corporate ownership, aside, I feel like the more companies that are in on this, the more likelihood that it comes to fruition sooner rather than later.
You're talking economy of scale.
Right, exactly. So, Porsche was like basically the one at the forefront, but now Lamborghini is involved, and maybe Ferrari gets involved, like you said, and you know what, Toyota's involved now too. Ooh, okay, now we're kind of getting somewhere. Now, like the more companies that sort of line up and get this going, then I think we can knock off a lot of time for the timelines that I put forward.
So, I do want to add some perspective to this. So the article continues, Lamborghini is pinning its hopes on synthetic fuel to extend the life of internal combustion engines beyond 2035, when the European Union will ban sales of new cars that produced harmful emissions. The ruling doesn't explicitly outlaw combustion engines as it leaves room for e-fuels provided they're carbon neutral. So, that being said, now, there's a lot going on there. Number one, I am not an insider when it comes to European politics. I think that's a great idea for Europe. But, like, for every Paris, Berlin, London, well, I guess they're not part of the EU anymore. Rome, like for all these modern cities that you think of when you think of Europe that are also rooted in deep history, like they're still like your Croatias. That, yeah, they have some industrial areas, but there's a lot of like, I just do not see a place where that ban is going to stick. Now, that being said, it's still there when we've all but gotten rid of all of our 2035 goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to sell internal combustion in Europe, you have companies like Toyota who are doing a lot with hydrogen and not in the way that a lot of people think. They instead of fuel cell technology, they're doing it as hydrogen as the explosive bit. Think controlled Hindenburg, but not like they have a rally car that's going to debut in Rally 2, which is the second highest rung on the World Rally Championship. Yeah. They have a version of their current hypercar. Sean had mentioned the hybrid Cadillac, which sounds incredible. Agreed. But they have a version of Toyota's version of that. Well, it's a hypercar. I won't get into the minutia. Races at Le Mans in the same class. That's going to run on hydrogen, not, an explosive liquid. So on that hand, you have that. And again, hydrogen, we all did the experiments in high school chemistry of electrolysis where you had the Bunsen burner running on the hydrogen that you got from, doing the experiment in class. And on the other hand, you have synthetic fuels, which which again, if Europe sticks to this, it's that or biofuel, i.e. ethanol, which is cleaner but not carbon neutral, so to speak. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but there's ways and etc. But the point I'm making is that if a Porsche wants to exist, if a Lamborghini wants to exist, Aston Martin, go all the way down the rungs, they're going to have to get on board. And
that's true.
10 years, on the one hand, 10 years feels like a long time. On the other hand, 10 years is nothing. Right? When you consider, Porsche has a synthetic fuel plant. I think it's in Chile. Why Chile? I don't know. I guess that's where they could get the space.
Yeah, as
But
you say, probably cheapest. That's my guess.
but in the sense of the fact that you know you got to buy land, you got to build the facility. Next thing you know, that's like now that's 10 years is 4 or 5 minimum. It might be 2 or 3, or worse. So, like, again, there's 2 avenues. There's you best start doing this stuff, otherwise everything's going to be some variation of hybrid or electric or those partial zero emission vehicles that I'm guessing that's where they're first are going to like take a step back for. Like you kind of have to, guys. Like if you want, Lamborghini's putting a ton of R&D into this new engine for the thing I can't pronounce. Their new V8. They're not going to want that to be a 10-year engine. Look at Lamborghini's history. The V10, that's over 10 years old. The V12, hell, up until the Aventador, that V12 was based on the Mura V12. So, like, these companies are not going to want to invest in new internal combustion engines or the internal combustion engines they've already invested in without having a backup plan. Now, Emma, is that to say that all of a sudden we're going to see in the next 5 years a rush of news of people breaking ground on these synthetic fuel, I don't even know what you want to call them, farms or plants or whatever? Maybe. But if these what's Ferrari if it's all EV? Boring. I mean, I can make an argument they're kind of boring as it is.
You wouldn't be wrong.
What's Aston Martin without what's a BMW M car without a screaming straight 6 or V8 or V10 or whatever? It's just like a lot of these companies.
It ain't
What's that?
It ain't it.
Yeah. So we have Silver Shocks over on YouTube. Welcome, my dude. He goes, based on assuming top-down engineering, I wonder how it would affect the racing ecosystem since they have ICE and EV classes. What would it mean with hybrid and turbos and stuff? So I'll kind of touch on that since I nerd out about the motorsport side of things.
Yes.
I have the time to do it.
That's a topic right up your alley. I'm just like, oh, this is, as you're saying it, I'm just like, ooh, I bet Chad has opinions on this. Go.
So, hey, continue. So I'll sit here and say, from a motorsports point of view, Formula One, as it currently sits, the 2026 engine regulations are aiming to be 50-50, i.e. 50% of the power comes from internal combustion, 50% of the power comes from a hybrid electric system. But they got rid of one of the ways they generate electricity, and now it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense, and there's a lot of concern that next year's cars are going to look stupid when you run out of electric halfway down a straight at a place like Monza. But and then you obviously have Formula E. Now, if you like watching Formula E, God bless you. Personally, I think it's a bit of a niche. It's a bit of a sideshow. I think there's legitimacy to it, but the fact that they only race on these street circuits, and that's done for very much on purpose. There's a reason these cars don't go to Spa, and it's because they would look slow AF. Because they are slow compared to a Formula 1 or a Formula 2 or even an F3 car. Technology's cool, but the entertainment value or they're not there with the like I said, an F2 car, which is basic hybridization at best. And then you have stuff like NASCAR, who just unveiled their electric crossovers, which is, I cannot stress this enough, going to be an unmitigated failure. Because what's the first thing when you think of NASCAR fans? If you say sophistication, I'm going to need you to put the absinthe down and really look at your life. Because they don't give a crap. And the people who do like electric racing are going to look at it and go, oh, that's cute. And then, whatever.
Yeah, and then not care.
Arguably, the place where these emerging technologies, whether it be fuel type, driveline type, internal combustion / hybridization, is sports car racing, specifically in the hybrid and LMDH classes. Now, I broke down what the difference is, but there's two classes racing under the hypercar banner. You have things like the Ferrari, the Peugeot, the Aston Martin, the forgetting one, and it's embarrassing, but basically that's under the LMH rule set, which is $25 million per year roughly budget. They get a clean sheet. They design their own chassis, engine, hybrid system. They can be the four-wheel drive cars, even though that's highly regulated. They have more freedom of design. And then you have the LMDH cars, which is the Cadillac, the Porsche, the BMW, the Alpine. That's what Genesis is doing. That's what McLaren is doing. And you have a power goal that's met by internal combustion and a hybrid system that's not only really adding about 60 to 80 horsepower. It's cost capped. It's less expensive. This is why a lot of your OEMs are going this route. It's, in my opinion, the route they should take, with the possibility of potentially adding more capability for electric, as far as the hybrid system is, just so it's more of a factor, because the hybrid systems now, it's woefully convoluted and complicated how these systems work. The short version of the story is you'd think 600 horsepower internal combustion engine, 70 horsepower electric motor, so that when you're on full electric, you're making 670 horsepower. It's not the case. It's when you're using full hybrid, you're only using 530 horsepower of the internal combustion engine. So 600, that's the maximum output. And they monitor this with all that. But they also have things like Garage 56, which is for this exact site. And I think you're going to see a boom. There's a hydrogen fuel cell car coming down the pipeline that's going to be racing there. There's going to be the Toyota's hydrogen internal combustion engine car is going to be taking part of this. It's an open it's a sandbox. Build whatever the hell you want. And you're seeing a lot of these run on like they seem to have the best grasp on it. I think Formula One, deviating from the power units that they have now, just to reduce cost, is like, okay, that's great, and okay, Audi likes it, and a couple other manufacturers the manufacturers love it because they don't have to put out as much money, and but on the flip side, I don't think it's that great, to such a degree that they had the V10 talk not that long ago. It didn't get passed because it didn't get the requisite percentage of votes to go to the next phase of it. However, they're starting to talk about in 2028, 29, bringing back the V8s with hybridization and stuff. So obviously, the direction they're going, they have second thoughts on. But motorsport it's supposed to be the test bed. So I forget who's doing it, but like, they're going to test synthetic fuels, hydrogen, things like that. And that's the consumer market's going to drive where that goes. But it's a great test bed because guess what? If you can make motorsports carbon neutral, the sky's kind of the limit.
Very true.
Silver continues, it seems companies are really split at the moment. Mercedes leaning towards flat plane crank V8s, Lotus considering a V8 Emira, and then Porsche going electric turbos and EV Caymans. I think if you look at OEMs, there's their core, like these performance. So Mercedes, they were all in on that 4-cylinder, big-ass turbo hybrid system driveline until people are like, no, we want a V8. And now they've announced that they're bringing V8s back. Porsche, Porsche's kind of a wild card because they're going to do whatever, right? Like the Taycan. I personally think the Taycan is one of, if not the best looking vehicles to come out in a very long time. But it wasn't really a sales boom. However, when you look at things like the Cayman and the Macan and all that other sort of stuff, I don't think, again, to go back to our conversation about performance crossovers, I don't think the person who's going to buy a Macan necessarily cares all that much. So the average buyer is going to say, oh, it's a hybrid? Cool, I'm down with it. You know, the electric car buyer is the electric car buyer. They're a little different and everything. And like we've always said, most buyers just don't want that slam jammed down their throat. I'm not opposed to one day saying I might buy an electric car. It's not anytime soon. It's not on my list of top 15 cars I'd want to buy. But there might be a day where I was like, you know what? As an everyday runabout, I might want a Taycan or something to that effect. You know, so... And you also have to remember, like we've mentioned before, Europe has not backtracked on this 2035 carbon neutral law. So if you're a company in business who's doing the correct things and doing their due diligence, doing everything the right way, you have to have your foot in the doors of these emerging technologies. Otherwise, you're going to be effed once if this law comes to fruition. And by every account, doesn't look to be going anywhere anytime soon. So it's kind of, you know, every manufacturer is going to have their own way of doing stuff, but they also have to have one eye on it because, well, you can't not sell cars in Europe if you're a European car manufacturer. Like, that sort of stuff. Sean goes, moonshine bar fights, the man in black, NASCAR. Like I said, NASCAR has gotten away, in a good way, from that Southern good old boy only image. In the sense of the fan base has grown. People like Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson have grown the fan base beyond that stereotypical NASCAR fan. But at its core, people like NASCAR because the racing's good, because the technology is easy to understand, because they make great noises, and, you know, it's blue collar in a sense of Rubbin's racing. You don't have to look very far to go to a road race and see them beating the ever hell out of each other on the track to say, okay, I can kind of understand this. I get with this. I jive with this. Now, their playoff system sucks. The current car needs to be addressed because it's not great on super speedways, which, news alert, the Daytona 500 is a super speedway race. It's their crown jewel, and the racing on super speedways sucks because these cars in their current aero package are like a big giant parachute. So you pull out a line to make a pass, and suddenly you're going 15 mile an hour slower than everybody else. Not good. And these electric crossover things is, number one, racing a crossover. The only people doing it right is Brazilian stock car racing. And because these crossovers bear no resemblance to their road-going counterpart, and they're effectively wagons, which are cool. They don't look like crossovers. The electric crossovers in that NASCAR just showcased at Chicago look like fucking crossovers. There is not a large enthusiast market for crossovers. There's more of an enthusiast market for fucking Camrys than there are crossovers. And I'm not saying that's a big chunk. I'm just saying it straight up. So they said, hey, we're going to have EVs. Universally slammed. People are like, we don't want this. I'm not going to watch this. Like, it's a sideshow at best. Like, people are going to be like, oh, I wonder what those cars are doing. Oh, great. I'm going to continue going. I'm going to go back to nobody caring. So it's just like, again, you got to know your audience, right? Think about it this way. I can't think of a better demographic to illustrate NASCAR than the, well, Mopar community. And, well, Mopar is only just getting back into NASCAR with the trucks starting next year. But they got rid of the V8 and sales plummeted. You know? Silver on YouTube goes, I hate to admit it, it seems the people behind the Corvette are doing it in the most tasteful way, using one chassis and building up to a Porsche 911 kind of lineup. I honestly think that's the correct way. so to speak. You used to see this with the Audi R8. You had the V8, then the V10, then the V10 Plus. You know, the trick with that is to have the base be desirable. You know, if nobody wants the base model, but it's what, you know what I'm saying? You know, the base model Corvettes, and even like the LT1s and LT2s, with the pushrod V8, sound awesome. I, hand on heart, would say it's the best sounding Corvette in the lineup. That's my opinion. I'm not saying it's the right one. I'm just saying that's what I think. And that has a lot going for it. Also has a lot going for it in the fact that there's no shortage of companies working with the LT2 to make it a better, badder, right. Like, you're 100% right, Silver, because the base models are the ones you're going to sell the most of. So, I mean, the ones you're going to make the most of, because, duh. But, like, I would personally rather have, I mean, put it to you this way. Lingenfelter makes a 427 cubic inch version of the LT2. That makes over 700 horsepower. I would rather have that driveline and a Corvette. Again, I don't mean to sound like a boomer. I don't mean to be like, the Corvette has lost its soul, blah, 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 blah. The new ZR1 is great and all, but it's basically a European supercar and not an American, like, blah, 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 blah. Bottom line is, Americans designed it. American engineered it. It's an American car. But with that said, I like the old American soundtrack. There's a reason when Ford was doing the GT350 and they did the flat plane crank V8 that they specifically targeted a firing order that kept the low down growl of the American V8 in the Voodoo. Now, anyone who's listened and watched me knows that, like, I don't think the Voodoo was entirely necessary for that car, but the fact remains that they made a flat plane crank V8, but they understood that it had to have an American-ish soundtrack. Excuse me. It's an interesting space to be in because you do have you used to have a similar line through the Mustang. You had the EcoBoost. Like, even if you look at the we'll use the S550 just because there's more models to choose from and it's a little less. But you had the EcoBoost, which is your base model, which was fun enough, but not so much power to where maybe I shouldn't give my college-age kid this or have it available to younger drivers. And then you have the V8 and the GT. Then within the GT, you had your performance and premium packages that upped performance. The performance package is arguably one of the... frankly, if you get an S550 Mustang and you don't opt for the performance package, you're leaving so much on the table. The brakes are incredible. The suspension feels really good. The cooling system is out of this world good. I had a 15 performance package with the obviously that upgraded cooling system, and it made 705 wheel horsepower all day long every day. It didn't, and temperatures bang even. And then of course you have your Shelbys throughout the S650 or S550's life, the GT350, the GT500, and then I will say this, probably if I was to start a build, I would start with a Mach 1. I love the way they look. I love that it's basically a GT350 with a Coyote. And I mean, the sky's the limit there. Let's see here. The all-seeing guy over on YouTube. Shame Doug isn't with us because he'd probably have an answer for this. Anybody know of an independent Subaru WRX specialist in Central PA? I don't off the top of my head. Chat, please feel free to help my dude out. Silver goes on to ask, Greg, you might have some insight on this. So what is inspiring these flat plane crank engines from the USA when originally it was more of a European thing? My thought process on it is, so if you have an engine, right, of a certain displacement and you want to increase power, you either have to A, increase torque and keep the red line the same, or you keep torque the same and increase RPM, because horsepower is effectively torque over time. It's how long you can make torque across the RPM range. Flat plane crankshaft engines aren't the best at creating torque, but they are really good at creating RPM, so you make more power. The other part of that is, especially from the General Motors side of thing, and the Chevy and the engine they put in the Z06 and ZR1, is those engines are going from a push rod to a dual overhead cam design, which is a more efficient design. It's a better, I mean, I don't mean to sound like a Ford homer. I know I do almost on a weekly basis. But all you have to do is you look at S550 Mustang came out with a 5-liter V8 that made 430 horsepower. Later, it would go on to make 460 and more. The Gen 3 Coyotes were criminally underrated. Not criminally, but notoriously underrated. Making the exact same power as the Camaro's LS3 and LT variants that were 1,200, or that were 1.2 liters bigger. I hate that I didn't do the conversion into cubic inches. Please forgive me. So, just being a dual overhead cam engine, better airflow, better valve control, you have variable valve timing on them and stuff. It's just a more efficient way of turning an explosive liquid into horsepower. So all of that considering, it's a way for GM to make a more efficient engine, both in terms of miles per gallon and more specifically horsepower. And it's just a way of making more horsepower out of a given displacement. Greg, as our resident European, what are your thoughts on the European the Americans going specifically in the Corvette and the flat plane crank in the Mustang, even though it's set doesn't sound it? What are your thoughts on it?
It's to be Ferrari. That's basically to me what it boils down to. And this might be my marketing brain at work because that's my day job. But when you hear flat plane crank V8, it just sounds good, doesn't it?
Exotic.
It sounds exotic, exactly. So,
I mean, it sounds like you drink tea and not coffee, but continue.
Right, but when you're trying to sell a really cool car, like there's all these like lexicons and buzzwords and all this stuff that they always throw out at you. The highest RPM range in class, the best value in class, the best ground clearance in class. Well, you know what? You don't need to say that when you're selling high-end sports cars. What you do need to say is cool componentry.
Or most powerful naturally aspirated engine General Motors has ever produced.
Right. But when you say with a flat plane crank V8, it just makes it sound cooler. It just does. So I really think that they did it as an engineering exercise to copy Ferrari. And
well, everybody knows the 5.5 liter GM flat plane crank V8 is effectively a 458 engine that someone hit enhance on.
Right. So during it's not a secret. There's multiple spy shots of it. Like when Chevy was developing that the C8, they have like a bajillion spy shots in Europe of the C8 with a 458 as one of the benchmark cars and a 911 as the other one. Like, if you're gonna shoot for benchmark sports cars, those are probably the two of the last 25 years to go for. Porsche 911 being the benchmark sports car since forever. So like, it is 100% to me an engineering exercise in marketing to be like, I want that in my car. It's from, Ferrari made it, a thing, and people talk about it. I want that in my car. That's what I think it basically, the whole genesis of it came from. So to me, it's basically that.
Okay, then hear me out on this. Why hasn't anyone, to my knowledge, used that line of thinking and saying, here's our flat plane crank 4-cylinder.
Oh, because it's not a cool engine.
But it's a flat plane crank.
Yes, but it's not a cool engine.
Sidebar. I think it was Yamaha or whatever. May have been. The cross plane crank bike engines sound incredible.
Yes, they do. But to that point, it's like, again, this goes back to my whole point of, in the showroom, what's the car you want to have there? The Halo car, to make them buy other shit. A cross-plane crank 4-cylinder, no one gives a shit. No one cares. A cross-plane crank V8 in a sports car, big time care. And I don't care who you are, and I don't care what marketing exec says this is wrong, because it's just not. When consumers think that they're getting a piece of the cool car in their car, then they will be excited. Cross-plane crank 4-cylinder is awesome if you have a cross-plane crank V8 and it's marketed as the baby V8. That's when people care. Other than that, no one's going to give a shit. Because cross-plane crank 4-cylinders, or, flat plane crank 4-cylinder, cool. That engine goes in my commuter car. No one cares. As car enthusiasts will care, because we're like, ooh, that's...
Well, no, I'm just sitting here thinking, if it sounds exotic for, the Corvette or whatever, right? Like,
but it sounds exotic for a V8. It doesn't sound exotic for a 4-cylinder, because 4-cylinders aren't exotic. That's just how it is.
Right. And yet you love Lotuses with 4-cylinders.
I do, but I'm a weirdo. Like, I'm the N of one. Like, in this scenario, I'm not look, the test.
So this is actually really good, because like you bring this. Silver goes, I feel more companies should build more flat plane crank V8s. Every single one of those cars hold their values so well. GT350, 458, C8, Z06. I have thoughts on this, but I feel like the direction you're going, I'd rather hear your thoughts on, should more companies make flat plane crank V8s?
I mean, sure, they sound great. I mean, I've driven a flat plane crank V8 in the GT350, and it sounded glorious with a great exhaust from factory. Is it a necessity? No. But I'm not going to say no to more flat plane crank V8s, because, I mean, that they do sound excellent, and the engineering behind them is cool, and it's a different variation than a cross plane. So why not have more fun V8 stuff? Like, V8s are the best engines, in my opinion. So I'm cool with more companies doing it.
Yeah, so you probably know exactly what I'm going to say here, but I think that Shelby GT350, yes, that the whole flat plane crank thing has, it's definitely a talking point on the car itself.
Right.
I still maintain those things have the exact same values if they just put a Coyote in it with better valve springs, valves, retainers, etc., and rev to 8,000.
Yeah.
You know, it's. I'll say this honestly. I think I don't, and that's a kind of a more biased way of me saying that. I don't necessarily think it's the engine that makes stuff like the 350, the 458, the C8 Z06. I don't necessarily think it's the engine in them that makes them retaining their value. I think it's just the fact that you just listed off three great cars.
True. Very true.
You know, I honestly think if the C8 Z06 had a 427 cubic inch, 700 horsepower pushrod V8, they'd absolutely hold their value the same way that they have. Frankly, it's the way they should have gone, but
True.
I mean, that's just my opinion. Like, it looks like Silver here is a fan of that particular engine layout, which is phenomenal. Again, it's what makes being a car enthusiast great. If you can get past the fact that other people have different opinions, and you can respect the fact that they do it from a place of love of the car, then it's awesome. We can disagree. It's fantastic. Look at me and Greg. We disagree almost daily. You know, and his DiMaggio-like streak of being wrong is impressive. No, I'm kidding. You know, but guess what? Greg's still my boy. So the all-seeing guy goes, another YouTuber drove a guy's Mustang that had an Amazon truck's pushrod engine put into it. The thing sounded sick. That was, I want to say, I forget who built it. But there's some of these Amazon trucks that are out there with the Godzilla 7.3 liter. And those are great because they are a big pushrod V8 with the Ford firing order. So they sound epic, but just a little bit different than an LS or an LT. Because the firing order is different. The Godzilla is an engine I want to play with. I just haven't figured out what... Well, actually, I have figured out what car I want to put it in. It's a Bronco Raptor. I just need the copious amount of money to make that a reality happen.
Yes.
Silver goes, flat plane crank Toyota Camry, please. I mean, yes, it is that dude in blue. Thank you, all-seeing guy.
Oh, that's right.
I thought it was him, but then I didn't want to, I think it's this dude, and then have to look it up, and I guess now I'm getting sidetracked with that. But at any rate, Sean goes, flat plane crank V6. They're out there. You know, and I think you're going to see a lot more of them because, well, Ferrari's using them, McLaren's using them. You know, fuck it, they're the engine in the Formula One cars right now. Going back to the flat plane crank 4-cylinder argument we were having, Silver goes, I thought twin charge sounded cool. The whole point of why I even turned my head towards a V60. You know, I was only sitting here saying it's like, you're from a marketing standpoint of like, check out the brand new, I don't know. Fuck, check out the brand new Corolla with the flat plane crank 4-cylinder engine. Like, dumbasses are going to look at that and not think, well, shit, all modern 4-cylinders are flat plane. He's going to look like, ooh, that sounds exotic and interesting and different. I can't afford the V8, but if it's good in a V8, it's got to be good in a 4-cylinder.
The mystery box could be anything. It could even be a mystery box.
Which could be anything.
Could be anything. No, you're right. I mean, it's that exotic kind of sounding thing, but I don't know.
I agree with you. 4-cylinder engines, unless they're bike engines, are not exotic.
No, they're not. They're just not. And it's a great thing. I just made a short about it, or a reel about it the other day. You know, Mercedes is now going back to the V8 in their AMG stuff in the C63s and E63s because no one wanted the 4-cylinder with a hybrid. I wonder why. Like, it doesn't sound like anything. It sounds buzzy. It has a ton of performance. 671 horsepower. It's the most performance-oriented AMG car that could potentially haul people around literally ever. But no one cared. No one wanted the V8. Like, 4-cylinders aren't exotic. You're not going to sell the general public or enthusiast buyers on 4 cylinders being exotic enough to be in cars that need hybrids to make 600 plus horsepower. It's very cool from a technology standpoint. From a consumer wanting to buy this thing standpoint, no one cares. And no one will. 4 cylinders that are cool. Horizontally opposed 4 cylinders and Subarus. Very cool. They're not exotic. Inline fours from Japanese manufacturers that could be boosted to the absolute moon by turbos the size of your house that could make insane power with a laptop. Very cool. Not exotic. They're just not exotic engines. They never will be.
Is it possible to make a flat plane crank 5-cylinder?
I was just gonna be like, flat plane crank horizontal 4-cylinder. Not possible.
It's 100% possible. It's a V. Porsche made a flat plane crank V4 in the 919.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. I forgot about that.
The all-seeing guy goes, the Amazon truck was knocked over in a tornado. The engine was fine though. I mean, it's a great place to find an engine because those 7.3s are pretty stout. They're good at making, obviously, naturally aspirated horsepower. So if you want to make like 700 NA horsepower, go for it. Because I think the Megazilla makes almost that. So, but they're great engines. They're believe it or not, they're not as strong as the Coyote. So if like you want to push mega horsepower, which is a very small part of a very small part of group of people, right? Brett LaSalle is out here pushing 3,400 horsepower from a Predator block Coyote. At 5 liters, right? MMR is out here making 4,500 horsepower on a billet block Coyote, which I guess has absolutely nothing to do with what we were talking about, but it just popped into my head.
That's fine.
Silver goes, they don't hold up any brand's prestige. Porsche learned with their 718 Kettmann and the 2.5 liter turbo. I mean, I also think Porsche has a built-in advantage because all of their stuff started as flat fours. And Silver goes, hey, BMW just came out with an M2 race car with a 4-cylinder turbo. I mean, 4-cylinder turbocharged 4-cylinders are in a lot of motorsports. Rally. Are there any in... There aren't any in sports car racing that I can think of. I'll go what the crap is it? The Global Touring Car. TCR. TCR class has a lot of turbocharged 4-cylinders. That's a really cool class of racing because it has these cars making a pretty decent amount of horsepower and big ass fender flares, which I'm a win for. Where was it? Sean goes, what's crazy to think about is the flat plane pushrod V8s. Volvo made one back in the 60s. Yes. And that instantly made me think of this. You've heard this, right? Which is some. Oh, there's another drive-by. Hold on, let's go back to that. Where's my desktop? There it is. That is a flat plane crank LS7. Revs to 8,500 RPM. So much induction noise. God bless America. Sorry, Sean, you sent me down a rabbit hole and I knew that thing existed. I'll sit here and say this. Oh, I didn't mean to hit that button. Oopsies. I will say this: when it comes to like cars, when it comes to cars on a car podcast, no, get out. Oh, I've accidentally muted the Gregson. Accidentally.
Oh,
You're good. You're good.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I muted
Okay.
you.
No, it's cool. Thought I muted myself because I did mute myself during that clip because I know sometimes the background noise gets wonky.
Right, which is why I muted it on my end. In
Oh,
any
nice.
rate,
Good call.
I think it depends on the car, which is a very blanket statement, right? But not for nothing, the S2000, 4-cylinder, mega red line, pretty exciting car, right? You know, there's been some, obviously there's a lot of good V6s out there. Ever since, 5-cylinder, Greg, your V70R
Yep.
sounded epic. Now, if only,
Yes.
the Audi TT RS and RS3, right? Sound incredible. But having owned two V8s, both of which let me down, there's no beating a V8.
No, there's not.
But like you can have all the cars I've mentioned are all fun as hell. Cars I would love to own. Just, I mean, but I think this is a good little natural spot, little stopping point. I'm exhausted, so
Yeah, I'm fading fast actually too. It didn't hit me until I came back like 20 minutes ago, and I'm just like, man, it's 10:18. It feels like 1:18 in the morning.
right. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Silver and All Seeing, those are two new names. Appreciate you guys stopping by, hanging out, commenting, talking. It's awesome. To all the regulars, I saw Sean, Andrew, Steve, Doug was here at one moment. Anyone I'm forgetting?
If you are new here and you were watching this, we're usually here Wednesdays at 8:30 Eastern. So swing back that time. We'll have more topics to talk about next week for sure.
100%. But as for this one, guys, that's going to be a wrap. Again, thank you to everyone. Greg, your dad advice for the week. Go.
Ooh, dad advice for the week. Oh man, I didn't have it. This is the first week I haven't actually prepared anything, so I'm gonna try to think of something off the top of my head.
Always be prepared.
That's the Boy Scout motto. Get out of here. That's dad advice. That's just advice for everyone. Let's see. Oh man. Oh shit. We used that one last week. I was gonna say, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, that was literally last week. Greg.
I know. I'm trying to think of like boomer phrases now because they're like it's all just such dad advice. I don't know.
Right,
I don't have anything for today.
I'll cover for you today.
All right, if you got one, go for it.
Wear comfortable shoes.
That is good dad advice.
Doesn't matter how stylish or how good you look. If your dogs are barking, you're going to be miserable, and people around you too are going to. So,
That's
comfortable
true.
shoes. And on that note, we will catch you guys next week. Have a great week.